Okay, so 216 that I have listed went under contract, and there was a lot of back and forth going on with that initial offer. But at the same time, we had two potential backup offers. And one of the agents was really trying very hard to push the client, come on, let's write, come on, let's write at my direction, because they were like, backup offer. And they said, yeah, write a backup offer because the first offer is contingent. And they were like, well, let me see, let me see. And then, one thing led to another. Their client had appointments and it was too late in the day, and then they felt rushed, and then they didn't want to do it. So it was like, okay, no problem. There's another one who's considering writing. So no worries. I'll let you know if something changes. And then the other ones that we're going to write are, so you know what, I'm going to say, I feel so happy that I am available to you all to answer your texts, answer your phone calls when you have questions, because there are some agents, a lot of agents, that just don't have that someone. And it's so challenging because it can really break the confidence of the client. It could break the confidence of, if it was a referral, it could break the confidence of the referring agent. So there's a lot of different pieces that go into play. When you're new, it's easy to get excited and just want to write the offer, but I don't know what I'm doing. But it's really, really important to have a soundboard. And I think at minimum, for anybody that you guys are talking to that are brand new or thinking about getting in, have them hook up with a mentor, preferably me, but if not with me, with a mentor, because, or if you sponsor somebody in, be sure to handhold that person a little bit, not a lot of it, because you are all independent contractors and this is your own business and you have to handle it like a business, and nobody's going to tell a bookstore owner how to run a bookshop. I mean, that's their business. They need to learn how to do it, and there's a framework for it. But anyway, so this other set of agents that are new to the industry and new to EXP really just didn't have a clue. Granted, they are on a team and you would think they would know, but they don't. So it's really challenging. Just because there are teams out there doesn't mean that they really have all of the structured tools and resources available for people. So just FYI to that, and keep that at the back of your mind. If you are thinking of ever growing into a team, make sure not all teams are created equal. So just make sure you do your due diligence on that as well. But backup offers are not really well known. A lot of agents, a lot of old timey agents like myself, know about backup offers and know how to use them to their advantage. Why do you want to put your client in a backup position? Do you know the answer to that, George?
I would say if the first offer can't get the loan or just something comes about, maybe the seller doesn't want a contingency period. They want to move fast.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great pro, right? What else is another pro to potentially suggesting the idea of a backup to your client if they're not even aware of it?
I think it would put the pressure off on the buying side in terms of they potentially have something, so they can still go browse and, still not, I mean, there's always something that could be, possibly theirs.
Mm-hmm.
But if not, that they can still feel that liberty of wanting to still browse. Because even if they're in contract, I feel like most people still keep browsing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they definitely do. Yeah. So can you see a con to a backup offer?
So you never get into contract, right? The first one just goes.
That's for sure. Yeah, so okay, let's talk about the cons since I ended on cons. So the cons with a backup offer is that your client, oh, hang on, let's let Ray in. We got to welcome Ray. Ray, are you there?
Hey guys.
Okay, hi. I was waiting for you to come on
Yeah,
camera.
I'm just
That's
waiting
okay.
to
You
get
don't
set
want
up here.
to. Okay. Hi, welcome to the group. How are you?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing well. How
Oh,
are
there you
you?
are. I'm great, thank you. Ray, meet George. George, meet Ray. Ray does a lot of work in the upper Santa Cruz County areas and all over kind of Northern California, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and
And
other states, but yeah.
yep, yeah, and if you have, oh yeah, other states, that's right. If you have questions about property management, in addition to Kelly Chateau, who does property management down in Monterey area in Carmel, ask Ray. Ray's got a whole family business of property management, so he's a go-to resource for out of state. What are the other states that you handle?
Oregon, Florida, Nevada, Arizona,
Right.
and the list goes on.
And the list goes on. Now, are you licensed in all of those states too?
No, just California.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, great. Awesome. Okay, so right now I'm talking about backup offers. Are you familiar with backup offers?
No, not really. I mean, a little bit just on like the buyer side, like on the
Yep.
investor side, right? Like we've submitted backup offers, but I've never dealt with that as a realtor.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Let me
So-
grab my notebook. I'll be right back.
Yeah, definitely. So we were talking about the pros and the cons of backup offers, and George was saying that there are some pros to it, being that your client can still look around. If they're in the backup position, they still have kind of their foot on first base while they can look around, where normally when you have a buyer in contract, that's not the case. And some of the cons would be that they don't get the house, and that is a true point. One of the cons additionally is that if you are put in backup position as a buyer, or if you're representing the buyer that you are suggesting to be in backup position, they can look at other properties, but they still cannot write offers on other properties. So they're pretty much locked down during that time frame that is written on the backup offer form. There's a specific form that you need to use, and backup offers need to be negotiated upfront. So I have a backup offer on 216 Sand, and which is amazing. I was trying to get two of them, one in first position and one in second position, but I got one in first position, and that one, they thought it was a slam dunk to just write it and be in backup, and they had an addendum that said that this was their backup offer. That was nice, but that wasn't the right form. And the sellers had a counter. So we countered their offer. And then I included the backup offer form that said that they would be in first position if they agreed to our terms, and they did. So they are in first position. However, there's a date on there so that we have to, and I based it on the date of our buyers that are in contract. Their date is on the 27th of this month to remove contingencies. And if they remove contingencies by the 27th, even though I kind of think there might be a delay, not on the buyer's end, it's actually on our end, then there's a little, a leeway of day count there. So if they remove the contingencies on the 27th, then I can let these backup buyers know, hey, our property is no longer available. You're free to go on your merry way. Thank you so much. We wish you luck. However, if my current buyers fall out for some reason, then instantly I alert the second backup people and I let them know, hey, the first offer fell out. You are now first up. Go get your money into the title company because you're in. So had we not negotiated ahead of time, whatever terms they initially put out there, those would automatically go into play the instant that I put them in, first position, once that time starts or the green light goes for them. So that's why it's very important, if you're talking about a backup position, backup offer, you negotiate the terms upfront, so that way when it's time, they're ready to go at go time. So that's the good and the bad with that. Oh, the other reason why it's a good, so the bad was that they are kind of stuck. They can't write any offers until that time clock ends, or until the seller says, yeah, hey, I'm gonna say, cancel the backup because we're moving forward with these other guys. There's that con, but the pro is that you're fighting for your client. You're saying, hey, not a lot of agents know about this, but did you know you can be a backup? You could be put in first position. If something goes sideways with the first offer, you can be, first one to jump in there. Why that's important is because it relays a value to your client. It relays, oh, hey, you're strategic. You know about something no one else has even suggested. So I've written offers, I've written on homes over the years. I've, bought and sold properties, and not one agent's ever talked about being in a backup position. Now it might be different, and I'm actually glad that Ray's on here, because being an investor, usually investors don't want to be put in backup position because you're on the go. You want to look at the next one. I guess it depends on the market too. If it's a seller's market or a buyer's market, there might be more inventory for you to take a look at. But sometimes, usually investors or somebody who just is like wanting to get the next deal, they usually don't want to be put in backup position. So I'm glad you do.
Yeah, it's only been a few times that we've done that. And we're never really in any rush, like if the right property presents itself, but there's already an offer on it. I mean, we have no problem submitting a backup offer and then just kind of waiting and seeing what happens. I'm working. Go out of the office. Go. But yeah, so it just depends, right? It just depends on the market. It depends on the circumstance, on the property, where it's located, and so forth. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Girls, hey, I'm on this call. I don't play anywhere else.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
That's a
The kids
preferred
are running
office.
around the
It's
yard.
way more fun in there.
I've got a whole nother office separate from the house, and they still want to come over here.
It's more fun.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that as far as like relaying value to your clients as a buyer's agent, submitting a backup offer and becoming it. Now for you as the listing agent, I mean, are you just looking at like price and terms and deciding who's first and who's second? Or how do you go about doing
That
that?
is also going to depend on the client. So my particular clients are a trustee, and for them, it is the highest price and the shortest amount of time, or the best terms. So that's what they would have been looking for. But let's say my client was, an elderly couple that needed to downsize, and it's been their family home forever. They might actually want somebody who had a loan, who was going to move their family in, versus just some investor that wanted to tear it down. That might sway them a certain way, one way or the other, but and you never can tell at the end of the day. It comes down to the motivation of the seller on the listing side, what they need to do next. But I will tell you, even though I'm talking about backup offers, there's a lot of listing agents that don't know about them either. So be prepared when you talk about a backup offer that the listing agent may just say, no, we're just going to go with the one offer. That tells me right out the gate, they probably don't know about backup offers, because even if I had an over asking offer, which I don't, on my current listing, it would be kind of silly not to put a backup in place. And the backup offer reinforces the offer that's in place. Because you have to let the offer that's in place know, by the way, I do have a backup offer. Great, noted, understood. So when it comes time to remove their contingencies or ask for a credit, which they can still do both, they may also be like, well, let's ask for it, but let's also be prepared to move forward because there is a backup offer in place. You don't want your client to lose out on this deal to somebody else that's just chomping at the bit to jump in as the representative of the client in backup position. For the listing agent, there are so many times listing agents stop their marketing as soon as they have an offer. And they're like, yeah, woohoo, I'm taking it to the bank. I have this deal, it's going to close. And then whammo, something happens, the buyer loses their job, or they have an unexpected, emergency and they can't move forward. Whatever the reason is, they can't move forward. It's like, oh my God, now I got to start my marketing again. I got to do open houses. Never stop your marketing. As soon as you get an accepted deal, don't stop your marketing. Keep it going. but also try and get that backup for that reason, because it hurts no one really. If unless you want to say the buyer that's agreeing to put themselves in that backup position, it hurts them with time looking at other properties on the market. But I can tell you most agents who know about backup offers will usually, I don't know anyone that's ever handcuffed that buyer. You can't cancel the backup to go, put an offer on something else. If my backup people found something else and wanted to cancel, okay, I'm going to let them out. I'm not going to, handcuff them to the deal when it's not even a for sure for them. But again, legally, a contract is a contract. So there's that. But a lot of agents don't know about it. I think a lot of the agents that do know about the backup offers are from 15 or at least 15, if not more, 20 years for sure, more in industry experience that have had to use backup offers. And the brilliant, wonderful thing is that sometimes, have you, Ray, ever experienced being in a backup position and gotten the deal?
No.
Well, the beauty is when you are in that backup position and the first deal falls apart and you're automatically in and whew, you're in, you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of negotiating the terms up front.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so now as far as when somebody wants to submit a backup offer and you already have an offer in place,
Mhm.
and that buyer's agent is asking you, hey, where do we need to come in at to be competitive?
Yeah.
What do you tell them? Like, how much information do you tell them?
So you can tell them pretty much everything to make it as equal as possible. You might leave a couple of things out. Like I told these backup people, we're at full price, we're at full price. It's a true point. Is there a credit? Yes. Is it 10 or 20,000? I will say like the latter. And all is, how many days contingency? There might be none, or there might be some. And if there's some, I'll just say some minimal. I'll give some information. I won't give it to a T because it's still not a closed transaction and you're not really supposed to. But I will give a lot for the transparency part of it because there's no point going back and forth a ton, especially with a backup. You want it to be as clean as possible.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. Okay, so what else did I want to talk about today? The other thing I wanted to talk about was, I wanted to talk about MLS and listings and how to put a listing in, because I recognize that a lot of new agents just automatically think that they can't be listing agents because they're new. Well, that's not true. You can most definitely be a listing agent. Ray, have you had any listings yet?
Yes. So I sold one and purchased one.
Perfect. Awesome.
Represented a buyer on a purchase. So
Okay.
2 transactions. Yeah.
Okay. But you had a listing.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So how easy or hard or moderate was it to do the information in MLS?
Oh, that was okay. Maybe, I played around with it a little bit, but yeah, I watched a few videos and yeah, that was fine. Not too hard.
So that and Sky Slope and zip forms, all of that seems to work okay for you?
Yeah, so zip forms was a nightmare. There were so many times I lost all my information when trying, and especially when you're under the gun trying to get things signed and forwarded to your clients and the buyer's agent and everything.
Yeah.
So that was a mess. But then afterwards, I watched a bunch of videos on zip forms and created some templates and everything.
Perfect.
Right.
Good.
And then SkySlope I haven't used. I had my TC do all that.
Oh, okay.
And I know you're against the TC and I should be saving my 500 bucks.
I'm not against a TC. I want everybody to learn how to do at least one file on their own. And I recognize that some people have the organization for that kind of thing is minimal or not as important because of other things that they're doing, which is completely fine. I think that unless you have so much business, you're a different story though, Ray. You do have a ton of business that you're doing outside of real estate that takes your time away where a TC makes sense. And other realtors who have a lesser volume, if their volume is less than 12 deals a year, they could be doing this themselves. Unless they're completely unorganized and it just makes them neurotic and crazy, then don't do it. It's not worth it. Get a TC, that type of thing.
Mhm.
No, TCs are wonderful. They can be wonderful, but they also they make good money for something that I think is very easy for a lot of people to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's my stance on them. Not
Yeah.
against them. Okay, so then the other thing is when you guys get a chance, okay, Zip Forms is a fun thing to get into, especially now that it's done its little upgrade. I think most of you have been using the upgraded version of it. So it's still kind of fun for me to get through on a daily basis. But Zip Forms, if you go, not Zip Forms, if you go to car.org and you type in the search bar, I think you have to be signed in when you do this. You go in the search bar and you go to new forms. And it's going to populate, 2023, 2022, et cetera. Go to the new forms for June 2024. Next week, CAR is going to be dumping out a bunch of new forms. It gives you a preview for all the forms that are for the listing side and all the forms for the purchase side. There are a ton that are being dumped out for the purchase side, and there are a good handful that are being dumped out for the listing side. The listing side, the RLA, Residential Listing Agreement, if you open that up, it looks red. Red means these are all the changes we're making. Black is here's what's staying the same. Basically, it's changing almost 100%, that listing agreement. So I want you guys to look at it and be prepared because you have the option of using, did you know you have the option of using CAR zip forms for your contract, or you can use EXP's listing form that they're creating and will be, hopefully that will be ready next week also, if not the week after. So EXP wants their agents to have an option. EXP's forms that they're creating, I don't know if you've noticed the buyer broker agreement forms that EXP's put out there and the single form that they put out there is much easier to read and understand, not only for us as agents, but for the consumer. And EXP is trying to, be the pioneers and be completely transparent to the consumer and say, hey, consumer, we are trying to make the forms as easy as possible for you to understand. We are in compliance. EXP has created the forms based on all the different other big companies, other big, the big brand names that are out there. They've all collaborated. And I think everybody's trying to create their own forms that are easy, because the CAR forms, the BRBC form, it's confusing and it's multiple pages. We're trying to make it as one pager as possible. The one that we have now out is 2 pages, but it's way easier to understand than the one that's out there. So know that those will be available. Well, the BRBC and the single property form is available now in SkySlope, and those are accessible in your libraries inside SkySlope. If you go to SkySlope and you go to forms and then you go to libraries up at the top, you'll be able to see all of the ones for the areas that you want to, all the forms for the areas that you want to work in, like Santa Cruz County, Murray County, et cetera.
Can you remind me what the BRBC stands for?
The Buyer Representation Broker Agreement.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then, even though EXP has those out now, they want us to start using them. They won't mandate it until the actual date of August 17th, when everything else becomes law and it's a must. Then they will say you must use either the CAR forms or the EXP forms. They want all the agents to try and start to use them now to get used to them. But for sure on the 17th at that date, we will definitely in the compliance department be marking or pushing back the files that don't have it in there. So there's that. And if you have, let's say you get a listing tomorrow and you have to use the current CAR listing agreement, perfectly fine, you can do that. just know there's also going to be a new form, both from CAR and from EXP, that's going to be a rider to the listing agreement that you can use as a supplement that will have the verbiage and the language in there that's necessary to meet the new law. So you can get the listing tomorrow, but just know by August 17th, if it's not sold by that time, you will have a rider to add to the SkySub file for that listing.
That was the 17th.
August 17th. And also the buyer broker agreements, they cannot be for more than 90 days at a time. So what does that mean? That means, well, normally I would write an offer for, or I would have a form for my client for, 3 to 6 months. Well, ideally, that sounds great, but it also kind of handcuffs the client to you and for being full transparent about consumer centric, et cetera. We want to say, no, you do have options. I am going to have my time with you for 90 days only. So that also means you need to make sure that your clients are ready to go and show them property. So if you're showing somebody property now, it kind of, what it does is it really fine tunes your conversation with the buyer now. I know a couple months back, or more than a couple months back, when, especially like when Jorge joined the group, we were talking about buyer intake sheets, buyer intake assessments. When you go to the doctor, when you go to an attorney's office, there's always an assessment. Okay, you have that clipboard with all the questions on there that they're asking you. They need that information so they can best be prepared to help you and diagnose you when you're in the room, right? Same thing with buyers. We have the intake sheets. I have the intake sheet that I've shared with everybody. And if I didn't give it to you yet, Ray, I definitely will. Mine is very plain and simple. It's not fancy. It doesn't look fancy. It's a couple pages long, and it might seem like a ridiculous amount of questions to ask a buyer up front at one point in time, but it's really not, because when you think about having the conversation with somebody, it's like, okay, Ray, well, tell me why you're moving. Where are you moving? What's your motivation? And, what's your timeline, et cetera. And, depending on what your answers are, I'm going to deep dive even more questions into it. Like my favorite thing is, right, the artichoke and the heart of the artichoke. I need to get to the heart of the artichoke, or the reason why a seller is leaving or a buyer is buying. Are they buying for a job relocation? Are they buying because they're upsizing, they're growing their family? Are they buying because they have to leave a certain neighborhood because of the neighbors? Whatever the reason is, I'm writing that down. But I'm also asking, are you a first-time buyer? Are you, especially if these are people I don't know and I just met, have you purchased property before? Oh yeah, I've purchased property in Arizona. Great. Have you purchased property here in California? No, I haven't. Let me tell you, the market is different in California than it is in Arizona. Here's why. I don't know Arizona laws, but let's talk about the California laws. And then you talk about all of that. And then that's going to create questions from them to you. And then there's like a whole list of questions that I have. But what it does is it helps you find out if they're experienced, if they purchase property before. Like if I'm talking to Ray and I know he's purchased a ton of properties, I'm going to know he's a savvy buyer, he's a savvy seller. I'll know what questions to ask him or not ask him to waste his time. Or if he's investing, I'm not going to ask him, when was the first time you bought a property? Or, how is that rental you just came from? No, I'm not a rental. You're also paying attention and listening to him. You want to make sure that you're also coming across as that professional. While you're doing all of that, you're also setting the stage for your expectations of what you expect the buyer to do. Get pre-approved. We're not going to look at anything until you get pre-approved, because that's like going to the grocery store without any money. There's no point. You don't want to do that to yourself. You're going to set yourself up for failure. We don't want to go shopping without knowing how much your budget is. We want to make sure, and for sellers, okay, you're not going to use the cash from this to buy something in Arizona. You're going to want to get a loan over there. Great. Have you considered getting financed over there? Have you talked to somebody about that yet? Oh no, I thought we'd wait until blah, blah, blah. No, we need to do that now. And let's get you set up so you're ready. When you're doing all of this, you're setting up your value and the expectation that you have. And here's how we're going to show property. Here's what we're going to do when we look at property. Here's what we're going to do when I sell your house. the commission is not going to be a question. This is what I charge. This is what my brokerage charges. And although it's negotiable, looking at the value and the things that I bring to the table with what I represent, either as a listing agent or a selling agent, this is what we charge. Do you have any questions about that? Well, I thought I could do, a little bit less. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Tell me more about why you want to get to, Arizona in the summer. You mentioned it was your daughter and her kids. Let's talk about that. Do you want to, can you see yourself getting there you said you wanted to get there at the end of summer. What if you got there by winter time? What would that do to your situation purchasing a property over there? You need to keep diving into the questions and bringing it back to their motivation, etc. So that intake sheet that I have it's not just it's like a buyer and seller intake sheet. It really brings you back. The other thing is they might say, oh yeah, I bought a property with Susie Q as a realtor and she was great. She did, daily messages to me. She did, updates on video and on text and Oh, where's Susie now? Oh, Susie was back in New York, blah, blah, blah. Great. He loves Susie. So guess what you're going to do? You're going to do video texts. You're going to update them daily, et cetera, because you just learned some valuable information. Whereas also they can say, yeah, I had a horrible experience with my last realtor. Really? Oh my gosh. Tell me about that. Oh, well, they never got back to me. They never called me. They only emailed me and I get 100 emails a day. So I never got to see the emails. I didn't know what was going on. Great. Mental note. I'm not going to email this person. I'm just going to make a point to call them or do something regular so they see it, text them so they see I sent you an email, or text them or phone call them, etc. So what you're getting into. So all of it's intel. The questions I have are intel for you as an agent to know how to act with this particular client, or how you're going to set them up for expectation with business. So intake is very important. So while you're doing that, that's basically your presentation at the same time. And I know a lot of agents don't either have that conversation with their clients, or now, of course, EXP is like, treat your buyers like the sellers and have a presentation. And I think that intake sheet in of itself is a good presentation. If no one's heard of EXP and they're like, oh, I want to use one of these other, big conglomerate type of brokerages because they're big, well, that's great. They could be big, but here's what we have. We're global and we're growing fast, and we're, know all the stats about the company, because the company has that in the buyer presentation kits and the seller presentation kits. Get the stats, and you don't have to use their presentation kits. You can create your own, but utilize the stats that they provide and either insert them into your own or create your own and just use that data when you're talking to your clients about it. I think these days, it's not about necessarily the company that you're with, but more of the person who you are. Do they know you, like you, and trust you? And that's not good enough there. You have to be in flow with that person. I, even to this day, and it's a lesson that I learn to this day. I can preach it and I can talk about it, but if I'm not doing those same things that you guys are doing, I will lose business. And I did. I recently just talked to somebody who is making a move, and I've known this person forever. And I said, hey, I would be honored to help you. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you did this. We thought you only worked big properties. And I was like, oh, what? No, I work all properties. And they didn't know, because you know what? They know me. They like me, they trust me, but I wasn't in flow. I was not on the top of their mind to somebody that can handle a property of that statute for them. They thought I just did something else. Like, I mean, that's wonderful. I wish I did everything that they thought in their head, but I don't. And so I lost, but I wasn't sad about it, because it's like, well, darn, reminder, hello, do what you're telling everybody to do yourself. So it's a lesson learned, and that's also proof in the pudding that it doesn't matter how long you're in the business, you have to continually churn it to make business happen. and to keep your clients and keep yourself top of mind, even if that's just having conversations about life. Because it's always like, well, how's your job? If I'm going to talk to either one of you, I'm going to talk all about you. Let me hear all about you, what's going on in your life, in your family, in your job. It never fails in the end. And I do have one person in my life who all she did was talk about herself. And maybe at the end of a 30-minute conversation, there was 1 minute where she's like, what about you? How's everything going with you? And I was like, oh, she asked. And, I was able to tell her, but it's still, no matter what the conversation is, if it's all about them, that's 100% okay. There will at least be 1 minute where they do say, how's everything for you? And you can say, well, I'm still doing real estate. So even if you only have a minute left before they leave, that kind of a thing. So just make sure that you're always top of mind, no matter how it is. Even if it was just you sent them a nice text that day, I hope you're having a great day. Or, it's been a long time, we haven't talked, I hope you're doing well. And maybe you send that text to them and you just, I don't know, or whatever, just something to just keep that little pulse touch conversation happening with your people, because it's important. Questions?
Yeah, just to kind of share a story about me and how important it is to stay top of mind, or at least tell people that you're a realtor.
Mhm.
6 months, well, maybe 4 to 6 months after I got licensed, I didn't do like this whole announcement or anything, right?
Yeah.
And I have a sister who lives in Santa Barbara, and she ended up buying a house down the street from me in a neighborhood that I know really, really well, $1.1 million,
Oh.
and just used some random agent, and because she didn't know I was a realtor.
Yeah.
Of course, when I talked to her, she's like, "Oh my gosh, why didn't you say anything? I totally would have just had you do it." And so some random guy that she didn't even know got paid, almost $30,000 for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very, very